down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. And, of course, I see the usual menagerie of malcontents and miscreants over on Rumble, as well as I see the typical normative folks over on Facebook. And I say normative because they don't jump over to Rumble and get involved in the pantsless, braless, shoeless, and whatever other kind of less over there. So hello everyone. And I'm hoping that maybe there's one or two people that pop over on YouTube. That would be kind of cool. Of course, my, unofficial, and I only say that unofficially because I can't afford to pay her. My unofficial greeter has, of course, went and hit all of the social media locations. And I do appreciate that. I appreciate everything that she does. In fact, she's got a new video up on her shorts. Yes, I'm talking about Outlaw Dogs. She's got a new video up on her shorts. Apparently, her backyard was invaded by a bipedal, what do I want to call him? A bipedal mystery that has plagued the Northwest for the most part. And yes, on her shorts, not on her shorts or in her shorts, but anyway, a bipedal plague that has hit the Northwest. It's a mystery, and it's known as the Bigfoot. You got to head on over and take a look at her channel over on Rumble. She's got a nice little video about Bigfoot showing up and saying hi. So so anyway, and I understand that there's somebody from my neck of the woods that is visiting a individual over on Rumble. Z has got a friend from Washington, a fellow Washingtonian down there. So I'm going to go ahead and say hi to the Washingtonian who has decided to go and visit California. Scary thought. I mean, it's not, well, I mean, let's face it. There's really not much difference other than climate between Washington and California. But sorry, I'm cracking myself up so much. I'm coughing. All right. So let's get this thing started here. First, I have Four Roses in my glass, Four Roses single barrel. For tonight, and I am sipping, drinking, whatever else you want to call it here, in my Lucky Shot USA.com We the People glass, rocks glass, with, of course, whiskey stones in the bottom for it. And so anyway, gotta love that Four Roses. So there we go. All right. So obviously the weather is changing. Things are happening. We've got some new stuff going on, both in the government as well as in the environment. And by the environment, I'm particularly talking about the fact that fall is here, at least for those of us in the Pacific Northwest. You know how I can tell? I can tell by a couple of things. I can tell because, number one, the wonderful coffee conglomerate known as Starbucks, PSL, the pumpkin spice latte, pops it out. And, they're going to start sending all of that stuff out. And, I used to be hooked on that stuff on the PSLs. And occasionally, if I'm out and about and stuff and I feel like it, I might get one, but the pumpkin spice latte is going to be coming soon. I know that. if it isn't already out. Not that I don't frequent their places anymore, really. But occasionally you kind of have no other choice. Either you're with somebody that doesn't necessarily follow your same belief system or whatever, or you just kind of get that. But anyway, you also have the requisite Mrs. and Miss, and yes, I do say Mrs. and Miss complaints about the temperature, not only outside but also in the house. And the reason being is because, as I've said before, maybe you don't remember it, but I have I heat with wood, and exclusively, and so we are getting ready. I had to go and clean out the wood stove and get the stovepipe and all that taken care of today. So that's all taken care of. I now have, some wood in there ready to light, ready to fire if necessary. And then of course, last night, Mrs. Whiskey and I went out to a dinner date night. We went to a new barbecue place. Yes, I know. Anyone who lives in Texas or Kentucky or Tennessee or, any of North Carolina, you guys all talk about all your barbecue. And I've had barbecue in many of those states during my travels. So I'm not looking to compare. However, to get barbecue here in the Northwest, decent barbecue, is somewhat difficult. And so there was a new place that popped up not too far away from us that had barbecue. And I've got to admit, it was pretty good. I mean, I won't say it was, on par with some of the other stuff that I've had down in the South, because they seem to have the barbecue capital of the world kind of thing, or the barbecue locked up down there. But it was good for up here. And so I will probably go back. But one of the things that was a requisite for us was to come home and have dessert. And the dessert was, of course, pumpkin pie, because Mrs. Whiskey was craving it. So we're getting into fall, folks. It's starting to get cooler and everything else. In fact, today is the last day of September. So what does that mean? Well, that means for Wednesday night, I start putting up my spooky backgrounds instead of the typical bar ones. So that's going to start. We have a month's worth of spookiness and spooky backgrounds heading into Halloween. And then after Halloween, coming up in Thanksgiving land, I'm going to try and get a hold of Captain Unicorn and have us do our famous Thanksgiving, our annual Thanksgiving special, where we talk about Thanksgiving turkey and recipes and things like that. And I'll be posting the link to get all of the recipes that we've been using. And then also, after that, of course, I move to my winter cabin scene that I love for the little background winter cabin. And then, of course, I will be adding the Christmas ornaments and decorations. This is my favorite time of year, folks. We're coming right around the corner. We're getting on the downhill slide into my favorite time of year. And so, all of that gets reflected, of course, here on the show. So you must come back and check it all out. And especially join in the conversation and everything for us. So there we go. I love this time of year. I love the snow. I love the cold. My absolute favorite time, and the one that I most feel at comfort, relaxed, that kind of stuff, is when I have a very cold, crisp, clear night with snow on the ground, the moon out and shining and making all the snow all lit up with the reflection obviously coming off of the sun. I got to get technical there because, of course, that's science, and we love science. Real science, not the fake science that Fauci puts out. But also, I love sitting in front of a campfire on a really cold night, so I'm looking forward to a lot of that coming. And yes, I cannot forget the moccasin snake ornaments that I was given last year and not too long ago at the end of the unofficial sports team mascots of the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Of course, I'm looking forward to seeing them swim on to victory. I'm hearing from a little birdie that their practices are starting up soon. So I'll be sporting that fancy shirt they gave me, as well as we'll make sure that the ornaments make it onto the tree, of course. So lots of stuff coming up this entire time. I love this time frame and time of the year. And this is just getting into the point where I'm going to be getting really, really excited. Do I pop popcorn over the fire? I haven't done it in a long time. But realistically, I mean, yeah. I mean, popcorn is kind of cool. I have a little bit of a problem with the kernels and stuff like that. But yeah. And then, of course, there's always the s'mores, as Bonnie throws out there, which is, you got to have some more of those. That's chocolate and marshmallow and graham cracker put together. We got all that in there too. So anyway. All right. Let me get into... Let me get into, of course, a couple of things. First of all, I want to congratulate the TGRN Blues crew that was out at Belton, Texas's B4. I think it's Belton's Bacon, Brews, and Blues Festival, which would cover the 4 Bs. They did a first ever for the TGRN Blues channel, was a live remote broadcast. Now, Vinnie Marini does his show, Music on the Couch, constantly live, and he does it live and through his studio and stuff. But this was the first time that the crew actually went out onto a remote location, and it was. I've got to admit, it was nerve-wracking for me. Because, of course, I'm like the technical advisor for all of this. So I was hoping and praying that it was going to go well, and it did. It went quite well. The team did an absolute wonderful job. It was Jonathan Oogie Richards. It was Memphis Mark Sonneman, and, of course, Amber Burr Hill, all there out at the Belton, right in front of the Belton Courthouse, doing their transmission, and it was just fantastic. I was very impressed. It was just wonderful. So for them, I want to go ahead and give them a round of applause here. Congratulations to that team for doing that, and hopefully we're going to be doing, or the team will be doing some further remote sessions here in the near future. For that. And, so I caught that, Rumble fans. I'm not going to say it though. Not going to do it. All right, let's move on. You already know that I'm drinking 4 roses. Let's go ahead and move on to our next segment, which is a fan favorite on this day in American history. And, of course, for On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac from William J. Bennett and John T. E. Cribb, chock full of all kinds of American facts about this country's fantastic and historical founding. And tonight is the end of September. It is September 30th. And so we are going to talk about the Berlin airlift ending. The end of World War II left Germany divided into two rival systems. Western Germany, which was occupied by the United States, Britain, and France, was a free zone with a rebounding economy. Eastern Germany, controlled by the Soviet communists, was a grim totalitarian police state. The city of Berlin, Hitler's old capital, was divided in the same way, but it lay deep inside communist East Germany. In 1948, Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin moved to take all of Berlin by closing roads and train tracks leading into the city's free western portion. Sealed off from the rest of the world, more than 2 million West Berliners faced starvation. Harry Truman realized he could not get supplies to the city by ground without starting World War III. Considering that they had just finished, I can't imagine why he didn't do that. Sorry, that was my commentary. So he decided to do it by air. Thus began the Berlin Airlift, one of history's greatest humanitarian efforts. Beginning in June of 1948, American and British planes made more than 277,000 flights, delivering food, coal, medicine, and other supplies. At times, the planes landed in West Berlin as often as every 4 minutes. Just a few years earlier, Allied bombers had been pounding Berlin to rubble. Now, U.S. cargo planes dropped candy by parachute to German children who scrambled to retrieve it. Nearly 100 U.S. and British servicemen lost their lives during the operation. But after 11 months, Stalin gave in and lifted the blockade. The planes kept flying, though, all the way through September 30th, 1949, to build emergency stockpiles. In all, they delivered some 2.3 million tons of supplies, more than a ton for every man, woman, and child. As a result of the Berlin airlift and the heroic struggle for the West Berliners, freedom survived in its most exposed outpost. And that is today's On This Day in American History. And just to cover that once more for for Mark over on Facebook, it's called The American Patriots Almanac. And it's by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. You can get it wherever books are sold. And they're not like a sponsor or anything like that. It's just something that I do, because we need to let people know about our historical founding and some of the events that happened and occurred in our past. Because if we don't study our past, we cannot anticipate our future. Okay. So, also, I forgot this, but also for tonight, that means I got to back up. I got out of order. I got so excited out of fall that I got out of order here. Okay, so let me back up. Oh, actually, no, I don't need to back up. What am I saying? All right, let's talk real quick. I know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying. Let's talk about the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And if you follow me on Facebook, you'll see that I posted this. But the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. It was a response to a PragerU post. The IOTC offers the opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, iotc.whiskeymusings.online, to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is iotc.whiskeymusings.online to get great content to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's iotc.whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous, sexy, at least according to most people because of the rounded corners, Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to Constitution. Oh, I missed the button. Constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Check this thing out. It is about 1/8 of an inch of Saddleback leather. It has water-resistant pages, and look at that binding. It is string that goes all the way through the leather and all of the pages. It has a 100-year warranty against materials and workmanship. It is buddy tested. It is Billy tested and approved by both of them, as well as my youngest Whiskey Musings warrior out there. So there we go. It's constitution.whiskeymusings.online. It'll drop you right there, and we'll take care of finding it, and you can go ahead and purchase it. Hey, Christmas is coming up, as I just mentioned not too long ago. But do me a favor, go and check out the Institute on the Constitution. Check them out today. I thank them for for allowing me to be a sponsor or a recipient sponsor, an affiliate, whatever. I'm just screwing up all over the case. Anyway, an affiliate, and of course, a brand ambassador for them. All right. So, we had the wonderful scare tactic by the left coming up about all of this thing. In fact, when the impeachment inquiry kicked off, and I watched it, I watched part of it. I can't say I watched the entire thing, but I watched part of it. It was, every time the Democrats started to speak, the first thing that they talk about, or the first thing that they said, was the Republican shutdown. And they had these freaking laptop or iPads or something that had these freaking countdown meters on, and they were just, they were putting them up every time a Democrat got their quote unquote time. They went ahead and put these damn things up and kept reminding people that this was the Republican shutdown. It wasn't a Republican shutdown, folks. It was a lack of consensus shutdown. Now, was it caused by the Republicans, or would it have been caused by the Republicans? Yeah, potentially, but that's what happens when you have to try and rein in spending. See, we don't have a funding problem. What we have is a spending problem. We have a group of individuals who are in the government right now that are doing nothing but running up the credit card debt limit. And they keep pushing it and pushing it and pushing it, making our grandchildren and grandchildren's grandchildren have to pay for the $33 trillion that we are currently in debt. And nobody wants to rein in the spending, it seems. I mean, I'll admit, even both parties are really not that thrilled about it. In fact, that's essentially what happened here with today. So I don't know if anybody heard, but apparently the House, in a last-ditch effort, passes a 45-day continuing resolution and sending that over to the bill or sending that over to the Senate hours before the shutdown for the Senate to go and approve. Now, remember, folks, both houses have to approve or come to consensus on the bill. Whenever a bill is proposed, just because the House passes it doesn't make it law. It has to go through the Senate. The Senate has to discuss, debate, whatever. If they decide to change it, then it goes back to the House for reapproval of the changes. And the same thing goes on in the Senate. If the Senate proposes a bill and creates a bill within the Senate and passes it, they pass it over to the House. The House has the option to add to or take away from it, whatever, make modifications, and then they send it back to the Senate for approval. Then once all that legislative red tape and everything else is completed, then it goes to the president's desk, where the president goes and says, okay, I'm going to allow this, or I'm going to veto it. Now, if he vetoes it, it goes back in to the House and the Senate, and both houses have to pass it by I think, if I remember correctly, they have to pass it by a 2/3 majority. So yeah. So anyway. All right. That is essentially what's happening, as far as that goes. Well, they passed the continuing resolution, which, by the way, doesn't really do anything other than promise to keep funding the government, for the, essentially for the 45 days. So it's not like it really adds anything or changes anything. It basically just make sure that things that are, the status quo is kind of maintained for the most part. Now it went to the Senate, and I'm being told that, and based in this piece in the Washington Examiner, they were saying that the Senate Republicans were no longer going to vote to advance the bipartisan continuing resolution that they were working on, which basically signaled the fact that the chamber will instead take up the House deal. And, yeah, I mean, this does kind of kick the can down the road, but it's not like they approved any kind of new, what do you call it? Bills or any kind of money or anything else. They just basically said, look, we'll just keep the government open until we can figure this out. Why they held on to it for so long, I have no idea. But anyway, so yeah, it's kind of, it's kind of disappointing in a way, because there was questions with regards to, things like Ukraine, funding Ukraine. Some of the bills that were being tossed about were basically to prevent funding of Ukraine. And look, I'm not necessarily, I don't want to get into this argument, this entire argument with regards to, Ukraine funding. Unfortunately, the president wanted to do it. He's been sending our money. I personally don't think we should be sending any money anywhere other than right here in the United States. I don't know why we are continuing, let's say, to fund and be the bank and basically bankroll all kinds of stuff. In fact, there was news out today that Joe Biden is funding some sort of a green energy kind of deal for Morocco. But the thing about it is that we got to start cutting spending somewhere. And none of them, not a Democrat nor a Republican, wants to commit essentially political suicide and get rid of any social programs that we have running around. But that being said, that program does need to get looked at too. So, from from a perspective of a person who has to balance the budget on a lot of things, it just doesn't make sense that we're spending all this money on all of these other things. And so this kind of, the whole concept of doing a continuing resolution, not balancing our budget, making sure that we pay or that we put out more. We're just taking out loans. When you hear the word deficit, think the word loan. And the problem with the loans, of course, is that with the current interest rates being the way that they are, the federal government is actually paying those interest rates at the same time. So it's not just, it's not just that we are spending money that we don't have. We're also spending money that we don't have and paying the loaners, the people who are loaning that money, a higher rate of interest because of our own essential stupidity and lack of economic control, because of the fact that we've increased our interest rates. We've forced the Fed to increase our interest rates because of inflation. And so, again, it's a catch-22 bad cycle that's going around and around and around, and nobody seems to want to tackle the beast and be fiscally responsible, because apparently fiscally responsible isn't a particular, it's kind of an oxymoron. Fiscally responsible just isn't. Anyway. All right. Well, right before, and this cracked me up. This cracked me up. So right before they did this continuing resolution proposal and so on and so forth, apparently the Democrats, who have been, hounding about the Republican shutdown and all of this other crap, well, they get ready to put this continuing resolution up on the floor. And a Democrat congressman, for those of you on the Rumble part of the program, and I suggested you should go and check this out, but a Democrat congressman, I guess, pulled the fire alarm. Now, the assumption is he did it to delay the GOP stopgap spending bill. But in reality, I think it's more just that he's just that stupid. And the reason why I say that is because, according to him, now it's not in this particular report, but according to him, he was saying that he was locked in and thought that pulling the fire alarm was going to allow him to leave the building and not cause it to be evacuated and, of course, interrupt congressional sessions. Now, I don't know about you, but I seem to recall something happening on January 6th where a lot of people were convicted of interrupting a congressional process or procedure. So anyway, and now, of course, he's a far left representative, but his name's Jamal Bowman from New York. He was captured on video seen pulling the fire alarm at the House office building on Saturday as Democrats were attempting to impede a vote on a Republican-backed stopgap spending bill. Footage captured showed alarms ringing at the U.S. Capitol building. Now, anyone who is an adult, I mean, even kids, holy crap, let's just even go so far as to say this about kids. Anyone who is an adult knows that when it's red, you don't touch it. You don't pull it. You don't pull the fire alarm for this kind of crap. And yeah, he did it. It's a post, or it's a story in the Post Millenial. I've got it in the show notes, or the description of the show. And he supposedly later said, well, I thought it was something to open up the door for me. But anyway, apparently there are also several witnesses have reported and confirmed the event that he is the one that went and pulled it. He's also reportedly part of the squad, I guess, not the squad, but part of a squad, I guess, of far left Democrats that are trying to obviously disrupt all of this stuff. So anyway, the point being here is that he supposedly, and I don't know how they're going to work this out, but supposedly could be punishable or could potentially be punished with up to 17 years in prison because of his congressional interference. And yeah, so we'll see. I mean, he's not, but you know, it's funny. Congressman Troy Nehls, Nehls, has a picture of himself. He posted on X. He has a picture of himself holding handcuffs. It's just classic. He was trolling him, and he goes, he posts this. He says, "Jamal, are you ready?" Oh my gosh. So anyway, yeah, he said that he did not realize, Bowman said that he did not realize that he would trigger a building alarm. I'm sorry, but anyone in grade school can tell you that pulling the, fire alarm or even just remotely looking at the fire alarm is no bueno. But anyway, this guy who's supposed to be one of our best representatives, I'm sorry, he's in the same camp with AOC. AOC is probably one of the dumbest people on the planet, as well as, you know, Mazie Hirono and several others of those Dems. But anyway, all right. Well, based off of all of this stuff that's been going on, you know, Matt Gaetz, who is one of the 5 or 6 Republicans that were really, really standing up to try and not pass these bills unless the border wall got funded or the Ukraine funding went away, or both. Matt Gaetz is suggesting that he is looking to, according to the Washington Free Beacon, he's looking to maybe oust McCarthy. Now, for those of you that can't remember, the whole purpose as to why McCarthy got to be speaker was because several of these people asked him to change the rules, which essentially meant that all it takes is one individual to suggest a no confidence vote in the speaker, and the speaker could essentially go and get removed. Well, you know, Gaetz has been kind of threatening this a lot. And he, you know, he's very outspoken. I don't know the man personally, obviously, but some of these people, I mean, they kind of go on the far right extreme, and they keep being called like the MAGA extremists and so on and so forth. And they're sort of the cause for some of that. But he apparently is looking at Speaker McCarthy and is talking to Democrats to maybe find a way to get rid of McCarthy. And 3 individuals apparently told Politico that there was a plot in the works and it would be unprecedented. That Gaetz obviously denied the report to the Washington Free Beacon, saying that he hasn't been reading the school newspapers, in an apparent reference to Politico, which of course we know is bullshitico. According to Dan Bongino, it's the leftist paper. If you ever want to find out what Politico, what the left is looking at, they essentially will go and they will tell you exactly what the left is thinking. So it's really a good idea if you're on the right to go ahead and set that up. So anyway, but Jayapal, who is, you know, Pramila Jayapal, she's our socialist freaking representative up here, that's really having a bit of a problem and an issue. Well, she's always had an issue. I don't even understand. I mean, she's from freaking Seattle. So there you go. All those Democrats down there freaking like her for whatever reason, even though she's one of the more idiotic, individuals in Congress, which, yeah. So, Sorry, I got to take care of something this. But anyway, so yeah, even Ilhan Omar, which we know is a part of the squad, Ilhan Omar is was suggesting that the Dems will only save McCarthy if he agreed to a 50-50 power sharing agreement. And she suggested that, according to Breitbart. She told MSNBC's Alex Wagner tonight that Democrats would only agree to save Speaker McCarthy from the government shutdown and motion to vacate his okay, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to be muted there, mister. Yeah. You can't, Salty, you can't come in and start ripping on people. You know, they ask you nicely to stop your capital letters and things like that. And then, of course, you go and you start telling people to go do sexual things to themselves. You're done. You can come back tomorrow or come back next time, or I don't care. I don't even care. So anyway, he's muted, by the way, folks. He's muted. So anyway, she essentially proposed that maybe if Speaker McCarthy was willing to get into like a 50-50 power setup, that was going to be the case, that they would help him out. And so, yeah, that was something that was kind of interesting, of course, but realistically, they shouldn't do that. I mean, they really shouldn't. But here's some interesting names, according to Just the News. Here's some interesting names of potential replacements that have emerged amid what appears to be a strengthening effort to remove McCarthy. And the thing about it is we'll just have to kind of see what's going on. But it's a short list, and let's see, where is this? So a report from Axios, which of course is a left-leaning organization. So let's just see what happens here. But anyway, it includes Republican Study Committee Chairman Kevin Hern of Oklahoma, House Budget Chairman Jody Arrington of Texas, and House Financial Services Chairman Patrick McHenry of North Carolina. And so those are the three people that apparently, according to Axios anyway, are on the short list to potentially replace McCarthy as Speaker for that. And I wasn't ever really a supporter of McCarthy. I never really thought that McCarthy was he's kind of a rhino. I mean, he's what would be considered, I think, an establishment Republican. And an establishment Republican, unfortunately, seems to want to go along to get along at times. And unfortunately, right now, at this juncture and crux of our history and where we are today, we honestly need to get some people with a little more backbone. I mean, a little more cojones, to say, to stand up to some of the crap that's being, we can't afford, we honestly cannot sit here and afford to say that these people are going to, that they're doing anything necessarily for us. Also not because of the fact that, I get so frustrated on this idea that we that we essentially need to understand that you can't negotiate with these folks. You just cannot negotiate with these people. Okay. And you just, you give them an inch like we've been doing for the last 40, 50 years. We've been giving them an inch, and they keep trying and successfully at times taking a mile. And so I just can't, I can't stand it when people don't have the wherewithal to essentially stand up and say, you know, enough's enough. These people are still thinking that they can negotiate with these folks, and they can't. You cannot negotiate with these Democrats. You just can't. They're so far gone. There is no negotiations left over. They want everything. They want everything now, and we're not going to come to a sufficient resolution for this to put this in perspective. And so, yeah, apparently Homeland Security Committee Chairman Mark Green of Tennessee has supposedly been asked multiple times, but has declined to replace McCarthy. So, yeah, I don't understand. I don't get it. I just don't understand where the Republican Party believes that they can essentially still negotiate with these folks. They just can't. We got to stop. And as you know, as Dan Bongino has put, cutesy time's over. You know, Dan Bongino's pointed this out. Cutesy time's over. We need to stop this. We need to quit kowtowing to these people just because of the fact that they have an agenda and are trying to essentially destroy this country, which is kind of ironic. Rob Reiner, one of my faves over on X, and by fave I mean I like trolling him or whatever, but he posted something about how the person who wants the government shut down is the dictator, and I responded back and went, Biden, because Biden's a dictator. Biden is much more of a dictator than Trump ever was or ever will be. I believe so. But anyway, it was kind of funny. At least it was funny to me anyway. All right. So looking at the presidential field and the presidential primaries, we've of course got Trump far ahead in the Republican primary, and I just don't see him again. My opinion, it's his to lose. Like him, don't like him, whatever. It's his to lose. He's the one who's in front. Republican people like him, and they are going to the MAGA the MAGA Republican, contingent is going to hang on to him, and so unfortunately he has, unless something happens, something drastic happens, he is going to more than likely be the nominee. And even recently, Ron DeSantis has been trying to take swipes at him. Ron DeSantis is barely pulling in the double digits. So, he's at like 15%, 16%. And he's supposed to be in second place. So, I mean, again, this is Trump's to lose. Like him, love him, don't want him as your candidate, want him as your candidate. Either way, no matter what happens, this is Trump's to lose. And I would, again, as long as Trump doesn't do anything or something crazy doesn't screw him up, in terms of his bid for the presidency, for the presidential nomination for the Republicans, I just don't see him losing it right now. So, all right. But over in the Democrat camp, we have an alternative who was gaining a little bit of ground here. And of course, the more that Biden keeps screwing things up, which I've got some on that if I get to it here in just a little while. But over in the Democrat camp, we have this guy Robert F. Kennedy Jr., that has been polling right around 20%. Polling around 20%. And he has reportedly decided that he is going to run as an independent. Now, this brings us to a very interesting scenario. So, if you recall, I was discussing on this program not too long ago, I was saying, all of these people, there was some consensus that if Trump doesn't get the nomination, that you would be going and writing Trump in regardless. And the thing about it is with that is, again, keep in mind, our system is a winner-take-all system. It is essentially conducive to a two-party system. It didn't start that way. In fact, we didn't really have political parties back in the day, but it's evolved into a two-party system. And so because of that, and especially due to the fact that somebody needs to reach 270 in order to win, they would essentially have to, as an independent, garner a heck of a lot of support. But the challenge here, running as an independent, isn't the fact that you can't run as an independent, because you can. But if you, as an independent, draw away enough votes, and it doesn't even matter which side, but you draw enough votes away from whatever the candidate is for the side, and nobody reaches 270, then the way that this goes, according to the Constitution, is it goes to the House of Representatives, and the House of Representatives will vote on the President of the United States. And I just don't see, like Dan Bongino, I just don't see how, because Dan actually brought this up, and I agree with him. I just don't see how anyone who is a Republican isn't going to vote for the Republican candidate, and anyone who isn't a Democrat is going to vote for, or who is a Democrat is going to vote for the Democrat candidate. And even though we have a couple of independents in the Senate and in the House of Representatives, they are like a handful. And so this is really, honestly, going to break apart any kind of monopoly, really, in terms of the Democrat Party. And this is a boon for the Republicans for this year. And so what you end up with is anyone who is who's a never Trumper. Well, they're going to go and vote for the Democrat. They don't even the never Trumpers don't really like Biden. Let's face it, Biden's poll numbers are absolutely atrocious for a sitting president. They are the worst so far that he's ever seen. And so, for us to sit here and say that, hey, Trump isn't going to win against Biden, I think there's a shot of it. But now with Kennedy pulling away from this and essentially going his own way, as well as you've got potentially Senator Joe Manchin is looking at making a run for the No Labels Party. You've got him potentially being a presidential candidate for the No Labels Party. This is basically breaking up the Democrat Party into multiple different, factions. And so what we end up with is we're going to end up with the potential for Trump to garner enough votes to be able to get back into the White House. Now, do not under any circumstances just decide that, hey, it looks like Trump's going to win. I'm going to stay away. I'm not going to worry about it. I don't have to worry about voting. No, folks, no. Every single person has to go out and vote. I don't care if you're voting Democrat or Republican. Your voting is your civic duty, and you should go out and vote every single chance you get. Okay. So yeah, it's essentially going to be interesting. It's starting to set up to be a really, really interesting 2024 election for this, just because of this particular scenario. Now, let's talk about Joe Biden, because we're in the Democrat camp anyway. So let's go ahead and talk about Joe Biden. You know how Joe Biden kind of denied being the big guy and everything? Well, supposedly, according to the New York Post, Biden's younger brother, Frank, reportedly called him the big guy whenever Joe Biden would call. The Wall Street Journal reported yesterday that Frank Biden, he was 69, repeatedly halted meetings with an executive at an Illinois-based industrial manufacturing firm to take calls from the big guy while his brother was vice president. So Matthew Brady, who worked at the film Federal Signal Corp from 2006 to 2017 as vice president and later as a president of safety and security, said Frank told him during several meetings, "I've got to put you on hold. The big guy is calling me." So this is just getting, I mean, the whole can of worms is starting to break loose. And I honestly, I don't see how Democrats or anybody can sit here and say that this wasn't a total family conspiracy, and crime family. It just isn't, because of the fact that even, well, we all know the mainstream media is going to just ignore it, which they did. ABC, CBS, and NBC, according to MRC's Newsbusters, uniformly paint the first House impeachment hearing as unfounded piffle. What the hell kind of a word is that? Piffle, Piffle. Anyway, yeah, so ABC, CBS, and NBC, of course, denied it. Denied all of the introduction of evidence and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it's just the case. And speaking of the evidence that was introduced, I don't know if anybody watched it, but I saw this actually happen. So Marjorie Taylor Greene introduced this into the record. She actually got it into the record for this, but the document, there was a document that was put out, and I've got it right. I've got the link right here. You can kind of sort of see it on the screen. Let me see if I can blow it up a little bit for us. Whoops, wrong way. So this document, which is an email that suggests that Hunter Biden may have, I'm going to say inadvertently, but may have sex trafficked somebody across state lines and had communications about it. And this person apparently has traveled or was traveling as an escort, or potentially a likely escort, from LAX to Boston, from JFK to Boston, and then, from Massachusetts to New York City. There's just like all kinds of things, which of course you're crossing state lines. And so what you end up with is you essentially have sex trafficking, is especially if this person was supposed to go and entertain clients as a sex escort. So there is a suggestion. So this was Jack Morgan, which was a IRS tax crimes prosecutor, sent in 9 cases regarding Hunter Biden and prostitutes to the Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf in October of 2020. And this was introduced as evidence as a part of the House Ways and Means, as part of the impeachment inquiry. So there could be a possibility of Hunter getting sex trafficking and sex crimes put up against him. I mean, let's just just totally ignore the laptop pictures and things like that come out. Anyway, which I think is ridiculous that they're ignoring those. But anyway, it's just this mountain of evidence keeps increasing and going farther and farther and farther. And we also have another member of the family now, according to the New York Post. Hunter Biden's daughter, Naomi, was representing Peru and lived in the White House, according to some public records that they obtained. And you'll have to, you need to understand the importance of this. If Hunter did not register as a foreign agent, because we have the Foreign Agent Registration Act called FARA, F-A-R-A. And what's supposed to happen is if you lobby on behalf of a foreign entity within our American government, you are required by law to identify yourself as doing so. Now, if Hunter Biden didn't do this for like the Chinese and Burisma and, the all of the other international business deals that he had, okay, then I highly doubt that Naomi Biden actually did it as well. Now, according to this report, Naomi worked as a lawyer on behalf of the government of Peru about the same time that she was living in the White House with her granddad, President Joe Biden. Review of, so this is actually a lot more recent. So from Naomi Biden reportedly joined the Washington, D.C. based law firm Arnold and Porter in January of 2021 when Joe was sworn in as the nation's 46th president. She had previously been a summer associate at the firm in 2019, but in September of 2021, she appeared in a filing disclosing that she was providing legal representation for the government of Peru in a case brought by Worth Capital Holdings 27 LLC, which claimed the country was interfering in their operation of an oil refinery in the southern Amazon. The company sought $590 million in damages. So the case is still ongoing, and Naomi Biden's specific role is actually unclear. But if she didn't register as a FARA agent, and again, FARA, not foreign, but even as a foreign agent, FARA registration, if she did not properly register, she could be in some trouble with the government as well. So yeah, we just keep pulling at strings, and they just keep unraveling completely. So this is not going to go away for them. And of course, the more stuff that piles on, realistically, the more stuff that piles on with the Bidens and all of their stuff, I'll get to that in just a minute. It just keeps going. It's a never ending stream of negative information with regards to the Bidens and what they're doing. So real quick, Tommy Young over on Facebook. I went digging, and in modern terminology, here's the definition of piffle. It's to lightly dab or pat concealer makeup under the eyes. It's a phrase used by cosmetic companies. Don't rub, piffle. Well, I don't think that's what the journalist who wrote that was saying, but hey, I'm educated because of it. There's so many things. I got to tell you, my kids come up with stuff, and they use like the latest in the Urban Dictionary, and I get lost. There's times where I'm like, what the heck are you talking about? For an example, just a really quick off the top of my head example. My daughter goes and of course is getting ready for her senior pictures. and she comes out and she shows us an outfit that she wants to wear. And she, of course, says, "Do you like my fit?" Well, I look at her and I'm like, "What? How you're like, because you dance all the time, you're fit, you're physically fit?" She goes, "No, my outfit." And I went, "Why didn't you just say outfit?" Yeah. Anyway, generational gap, generational gaps and stuff. All right. So you remember those 19 or 17 or 19 indictments that happened in Georgia here not too long ago? But anyway, yeah, 3 Chevy. Dad, get hip. Come on, man. Yeah. Anyway, hey, even Coco. Oh, I like this answer. Coco Dominky. I thought she meant how it fits. I would agree. Yeah, anyway. All right. Oh gosh. We could go on and on and on about that. Maybe I'll do a show on that. All the words and stuff. Anyway, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. Okay. So Fulton County, we had, of course, all of those wonderful indictments. We had Sidney Powell, we had Rudy Giuliani, we had Donald Trump, we had so many other co-conspirators, let's say, in part of the RICO case. Well, there's been a little bit of movement on this. So according to the Washington Examiner, Fulton County prosecutors signal that they may have some potential plea deals in the works. Fulton County prosecutors yesterday suggested they could soon offer a plea deal to one or more of the defendants heading to trial in the next month. According to, in the former President Donald Trump's 2020 election subversion case in Georgia. Special prosecutor Nathan Wade made the suggestion during a procedural hearing on Friday for the former campaign lawyers Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro, the alleged brainchild of the fake elector scheme. I don't know why they keep calling them fake electors. It's not like the Democrats didn't do that in Hawaii when Nixon was elected. But anyway, the pair of defendants will head to trial on October 23rd. Now, if you recall, Sidney Powell and Kenneth Chesebro both asked for rapid, speedy trials. So this is part of the reason why they are being pushed a little bit faster to try and get this taken care of. They apparently will start their trials on October 23rd on the charges related to alleged attempts to subvert the 2020 election results within Georgia. Wade said during the hearing to Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, we have not at this point made an offer. And then, which of course McAfee then asked whether District Attorney Fani Willis's office was in a position to make one in the near future. And Wade said, "Judge, I believe we can. We'll sit down and kind of put some things together, and we'll reach out to defense counsel individually to extend an offer." So there's a possibility that these two individuals could potentially get a plea deal for this. So, yeah, this is going to be interesting to watch because, of course, this is the one out of all of the Trump indictments. This is the one that potentially has probably the most legal teeth. And by legal teeth, I'm essentially meaning that because they tried it under RICO, there's a lot more in terms of there's a lot less in terms of actual physical evidence versus circumstantial buildup that could potentially get him into hot water. And so this is really, this is the one that presents the most legal danger, I think, to the Trump campaign. and not the Smith one in Washington D.C. And by the way, I saw an article also that reportedly Trump actually was thinking about taking this federal, but decided against it. And the Trump legal team apparently said, "Yeah, we're not going to do that." So anyway, what also happened on Friday is apparently McAfee, the judge, denied 2 motions for Cheesebro that sought to invoke immunity from prosecution and block emails that prosecutors obtained via a search warrant. So there obviously is something here. And then McAfee also announced jury selection, which will be pulling from a pool of roughly 900 prospective jurors. Hopefully that idiot who was the grand jury foreperson, who announced and like stood on the news and was like, yeah, like I wanted to depose President Trump, or I wanted to swear him in. Yeah, hopefully she isn't one of them. Realistically, sorry, that was a very bad impression of her, but then again, she doesn't really warrant anything else from that. So anyway, I thought I'd bring you kind of up to speed because obviously, the legal system moves fairly slow with this particular case. So with any of the cases. But I saw this in town hall, and the headline is a bit misleading, I think. But at least it obviously got me interested enough to go ahead and read the article. But town hall, it brought a point up with regards to the presidential debates, the last 2 debates in the Republican Party, because obviously the Democrat Party isn't doing anything because they can't afford to put Joe Biden on stage. However, what a lot of people don't seem to understand, and I've been trying to explain this over and over and over again, but 2024 is a really, really crucial election. And you can't afford to sit out from this election. You just can't. And the reason that I say that is not because of all the sensationalism and the rhetoric and all of this stuff, but realistically, you've got to look at some of the things that are really, really important to Americans. I mean, right now we have inflation up. We've got people who can't buy houses. And, the dollar is slipping and falling. We've got prices that are high and all of that stuff on the economy. We have things like our educational system is up for grabs. In fact, if you watch the presidential debates or the Republican primary debates, it was a key focal point for a couple of the people who are on stage, in particular Vivek Ramaswamy. Even Ron DeSantis talked about it. And, for the first time, and this is really to bring this out in terms of to bring this out into perspective, and this is kind of what the town hall piece is pointing at. The 2024 presidential election is crucial for the future of America. That's the headline. And it's an opinion piece by Sherry Few. Yes, F-E-W, Few. Our country, for a long time, has been handing over our educational institutions to the left. And as we can see, there are a lot of challenges, to put it in a nice term. There are a lot of challenges there. I mean, CRT took over. You had, you have the whole sexualization of the kids, the drag queens, the gender ideology that's been put into place. All of these things have realistically been stemming from the schools and the Department of Education and the NEA, some of the unions that have been involved. And a lot of regular average voters who have taken a back seat a lot. They've decided for themselves that going after the kids is wrong. And so I've even seen and heard of Democrats who normally would be like staunch supporters have essentially looked at this and been like, oh my gosh, they're coming after my children. And when you wake that kind of a reaction up out of people, it becomes extremely important. And the Democrats keep talking about kitchen table issues. And the reality of it is that, that is a kitchen table issue. I don't know about you, but most people who sit here and say, well, the state owns your kids, the majority of them would be like, no, I don't think so, folks. That's not the case. And so what is really important and reflective about this is the fact that education seems to be a very, very integral topic for the debates and for these candidates. And, we're looking at things like even just stepping out of like the social justice stuff, even like Common Core math. So let me tell you a real quick story about that. My son was in 4th grade and he was learning division. And he was having difficulty and struggles understanding what they were calling the forgiving method. In other words, it was and to be honest, I don't even understand it either because, I was raised on long division. But they essentially were having the kids do like factors and things of that nature. Well, realistically, a very simplistic operation in long division, just to kind of bring this story to a little bit closer of a close, the long division method was 5 to 10 steps less than what they were considering the forgiving method. And so what I did is I taught my son, because he was sitting here, he's like, I just don't understand this, Dad. I don't get it. And so I looked at him and I said, well, here, let me show you how I was taught how to solve this. And so I showed him long division. And he essentially took that and was like, well, why don't they teach us this in class? And I'm like, oh, I was basically said, I have no idea. Well, he went back to school with his homework, because it was a homework issue. So he went back to school with his homework, and nothing more was ever really said about it. Well, then a little bit later on, he started bringing some of his homework stuff home, and he's like, Dad, I don't understand. I'm getting the right answers, but I'm not getting the points awarded to me. So we happen to have a parent-teacher conference coming up. And so, of course, my wife and I go, and we sat down with the teacher. And I asked the teacher, I was like, who, not to really give her age, but she was actually older than I was, which is kind of amazing to me in terms of this whole conversation. But I sat down with her and I was like, okay, can you explain to me how he goes and he does exactly what the instructions say? He showed his work. He got the correct answer, and yet you are still marking him down. And she goes, well, I'm marking him down because he's not doing the way that we taught. And I looked at him and I looked at her and I said, who cares if he does it your way or my way, which my way is long division. You grew up with long division. I grew up with long division. My wife grew up with long division. Long division has been around for thousands of years. And this crap that you're teaching now has only been around for maybe the last 10 or 15. So how do you know that crap actually works when he's getting the correct answer and he understands this methodology? And she was like, okay, well, moving forward, I'll make sure that I give him, as long as he shows his work and gets the right answers, I'll go ahead and give him full credit. And I just kind of looked at her in amazement and I'm like, why would that even be a question? And she's like, well, we have to teach this way because some kids just don't understand long division. Okay, great. Then teach it to those kids. teach long division to everybody else that gets it. And she was like, we can't do that. And anyway, to end the whole story and the conversation, she and I disagreed. But my son got his points. And even today, he still does mathematical division via the long division method. I just don't understand the whole idea with Common Core math and so on and so forth. All of these changes and everything else to try and make these kids supposedly understand it better. But they don't. They obviously don't, because as you've seen, especially with the whole COVID thing, many of our students are just not measuring up to what would be considered educational standards. So anyway, so this education and your children and their protection and everything else, these are all things that are coming up on the 2024 presidential election. They are going to be crucial. And it's not just the presidential election, folks. It's also anyone who is in the congressional seats, who's in the Senate seats. You have to pay attention to all of them. And I know in today's day and age, a lot of people are like, I don't have time to, look at everybody, look at all this, but we have to, people. This election cycle is, in my mind, going to make or break America moving forward. And that's just my personal opinion. But what's funny about this piece is that it pointed me to a poll that apparently the Dems have actually lost what has typically been their historic lead on education in battleground states. And so it's an Ed Trends poll of voters in 4 different battleground states that was released in July 28th, I think, where they Democrats once held a double-digit lead on trust in education, and they're now actually trailing Republicans by -3 percentage points. So yeah, and this was done in the battleground states of Arizona, Georgia, Nevada, and North Carolina. But of course, they're still, at least at the time of this poll, they're still outperforming Republican counterparts when it comes to trust on other hallmark issues, where Democrats have historically maintained strong advantages. We're gaining ground in some of this, folks. We're gaining ground in some of the things that are going to matter. And when you come after people's kids, that becomes a big issue. Well, here's another issue that's coming up in 2024, and is actually going to be, I think, a key issue that a lot of people, don't seem. You remember that whole that whole thing with regards to the term Bidenomics, and how they were trying to piggyback or springboard or try to recreate the whole Reaganomics kind of thing? Apparently some top Biden allies are now saying that they want the president to ditch the Bidenomics message. And this comes to you from the Daily Wire. They are reportedly urging him to ditch the Bidenomics message as the president's approval on the economy continues to drag. Well, no crap. No kidding. His approval is continuing to drag. Have you ever seen, how many people are running up debt just for daily connections and daily things? Even the housing market is really, really slow. Housing prices are up, but nobody is buying because nobody wants to, everybody refinanced in the latest downtime. And 3%, if you have a 3% mortgage right now, instead of going and refinancing or trying to get more money in equity or even sell your home, you're looking at, 7.5%, almost 8% mortgage rates. So anyone who is in their house is hanging out. Anyone who wants to buy a home can't afford it, and so on and so forth. And so, this is just, so apparently, according to Politico, who is Representative Steve Horsford, who is a Democrat from Nevada and chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, said that with all due respect to the president, to the White House, this is not so much about them as it is about the people who are benefiting by the policies that they came out and demanded. We have to do a better job framing this, not so much for one person for the office of the presidency, but for the people. So they're trying to essentially get the the White House and Biden to quit using the term Bidenomics, which is reflecting directly to, to Biden and his lack, honestly, in my opinion, lack of an economics scenario. All right. So I only have a couple of minutes left, so I thought I would go ahead and get into a question for Whiskey. All right, and tonight's question for Whiskey comes from 3 Chevy over on Rumble. 3 Chevy writes, "Hey Whiskey." Once again, the requisite greeting for this particular thing. My question concerns the slow walking of the investigation into Hunter Biden's taxes he never paid. They keep saying that's off the table now because of the statute of limitations. But isn't there some way around that when you can prove a crime has been committed? Thanks again for all the work you do every week to make this broadcast happen. Well, thank you very much. And of course, that's signed by 3 Chevy. All right. So I've talked about the statute of limitations before. Statute of limitations basically means that there's a point in most criminal cases, okay, where the charges will no longer be pursued. In some cases, there is no statute of limitations. For an example, in the case of a murder, there is no statute of limitations. In cases of violent assaults, such as rape and so on and so forth, those are also subjected to zero statute of limitations on them. But each state, if it's a state crime that's been committed, has their own statute of limitations. The federal government also has their own statute of limitations. Okay. Now, according to what I found about this, there are actually a statute of limitations on certain criminal tax offenses, and they seem to fall in 2 possible time frames. Time frame 1 is 3 years. And this is according to, which by the way, this is according to U.S. Code Title 26, Section 6531. Now, if you recall, last week's question for Whiskey had to deal with the law that required people to pay taxes, and that is where you're going to find that is in Title 26. Title 26 of the U.S. Code is continually all about the tax code and who pays what and so on and so forth. So if you ever have any questions, go ahead and Title 26. But the point is that depending upon the charges, you could have a 3-year window or potentially a 6-year window in which the criminal offenses, and this is the key point here, the criminal offenses may not necessarily be charged. If you've gone beyond the statute of limitations, then your criminal offenses could fall off the radar. They may not charge you with them. Okay. And that's based off of the laws that are written. However, there are civil penalties that go along with not paying taxes or attempting to defraud the government or whatever other kinds of charges. Those do not have a statute of limitations. So even though they may not be able to go after him criminally, they can go after him in civil court to get to get things like his, his back taxes and requisite interest and all of that other stuff. That can be taken to civil court, and there is no statute of limitations on the civilian side or the civil side of it. Because remember, in this country, we actually have two things. You have the legal precedent or the law, and then you have the civil side of the house, which it deals with things like monetary damages when somebody does something to somebody else, if it doesn't fall within the criminal statutes to where there is a punishment or a fine or something along those lines. So they may not be able to charge him criminally, but they could probably go after him in civil court and try to get some of those back taxes. So even though, and again, usually statute of limitations refers to those criminal charges. So they may not be able to charge him criminally, but they could go after him civilly. And that's essentially what they're going to be talking about. All right. That is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening. Do me a favor. If you enjoy the program, head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It is free, and make sure to hit the follow button on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast channel to be able to know when I go live my next time, which my next live will be Wednesday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time for the Whiskey Musings Broadcast. Have a great rest of your weekend, folks, and we'll see you all, the Whiskey Warrior P1s, as well as anybody else, right here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast on Wednesday. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings Broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.